Welcome back to Media 7, where it's time to look at some of the other news from the past week with a news mash. Opportunity turned to calamity at Waitangi. No, not just the assault on John Key, the coverage. 3 News had a spelling fail. And it got worse.
Prime Minister of New Zealand, we've got some pictures for you here of John Key, who's arrived for a day of celebration on Waitangi Day. That's named after the treaty between the Maoris and the Australians.
The who?
The Australians.
Pardon?
The Australians.
Oh, the Australians, was it? In fact, as Wikipedia will tell you, Waitangi Day is New Zealand's annual festival of cross-dressing, where the people are led by a holy man and great songs of erotic longing. Staying with sport, the Super Bowl ad schedule again laid bare the American zeitgeist.
The economy's been a little rough, man.
Oh, man, just brutal.
Which, as The Daily Show discovered, is not so flash.
Now's the time to send your unwanted call for cash.
We're Cash for Gold is a Super Bowl ad? No.
But there was one really cool ad about how you can watch your TV on your computer.
You know, they say TV will rot your brain. That's absurd. TV only softens the brain like a ripe banana to take it all the way. We've created Hulu. Hulu beams TV directly to your portable computing devices, giving you more of the cerebral gelatinizing shows you want anytime, anywhere, for free.
I only hang out because I want your love. Dynamite!
Mushy mush. And the best part is there's nothing you can do to stop it. I mean, what are you going to do, turn off your TV and your computer? Once your brains are reduced to a cottage cheese-like mush, we'll scoop them out with a melon bowler and gobble them right on up. Oops. I think I'm drooling a little. Because we're aliens. And that's how we roll. Hulu, an evil plot to destroy the world. Enjoy.
And finally, the British phone company T-Mobile has aired a showpiece TV ad in which actors materialised in the crowd at London's Liverpool Street station and stirred a dancing frenzy. That in turn saw a 13,000-strong flash mob summoned via Facebook to the same station. It was art imitating an ad imitating art, the so-called mobile clubbing phenomenon in which groups of young people suddenly assemble, dance wildly to whatever is on their respective iPods, then disperse. This is the world our children will inherit. Not that there's anything wrong with dancing. It's 10 years since the country's biggest daily newspaper, the New Zealand Herald, arrived on the internet. The website has been celebrating its history in the past few weeks, but what of its future? We're joined now by Herald online publisher Jeremy Rees and teacher and blogger Julie Starr, who was on the inside of the British Daily Telegraph's groundbreaking expansion online. Welcome to you both. Jeremy, let's start out with the raw numbers. February last year you cracked 1 million unique users. That is roughly 1 million different people using your site within a month. Where are you at now?
We've had spectacular growth and it's continuing on Monday with the Australian bushfires and the Wellington Sevens. We had a record of 3.5 million page impressions in that day alone, with about 300,000 unique browsers on that day. So that eclipsed the record of the death of Sir Edmund Hillary. The big stories do drive that growth, but also we're seeing a growth in in broadband usage, and so every January, effectively, I think everybody comes back from holiday and decides they're going to upgrade their Telecom or Vodafone home sort of broadband package, and it seems to tick up a notch from there.
So broadband uptake has a huge impact.
Absolutely.
Is it also the amount, the size of the data cap people are buying? They feel more confident about using it.
Absolutely, and so we're seeing, as I say, the slow, steady uptick.
Was that the experience when you were at the Telegraph in Britain?
I think there's a very strong relation between broadband uptake and how well your website does. So, watching video, you can't do it on dial-up. you can't have four or five browser windows open at once because it's just craziness. But once you get broadband and it's reasonably cheap and available, then your behaviour changes. So you start doing more online and expecting to be able to do more online. Yeah.
Now, at one point there, Jeremy, you had a little experiment called premium content, where you started charging for opinion, editorial and search, and that had the paradoxical effect of actually reducing your traffic, didn't it?
It reduced the traffic to those areas, yeah.
That was unfortunate?
I think it was a good experiment to try because, as you know, everybody is now talking about business models, and the idea behind it was to say, is there a business model for paid content? It was worth doing, absolutely.
Julie, is that the experience worldwide? Is paid content over, or is there still some life in the idea of getting people to pay for stuff?
Funnily enough, I think it died and now it's coming back. I think in the early days of newspapers expanding online and building up their web presence and their brand and getting more content up there, it's very difficult to charge when you've got a competitor offering it for free. So really, if the Herald was charging and Stuff wasn't, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go to Stuff. It's not like you've got really huge amounts of unique content in daily news.
And the advantage of being free, if you make that decision, is that you do attract more people and you generate more page impressions, which are money.
Yep,
absolutely. So every page impression with an ad on it earns you some fraction of a cent.
Absolutely.
That's how it works.
But,
although...
yeah, I was just going to say, interestingly, as it turns out, selling ads on a website doesn't look like it's ever going to make enough money to fund a full working newsroom.
This is a big challenge, isn't it? You can make money, but you can't make nearly as much money. Same thing in television. You can make money online, but you can't make nearly as much money as you can in the old media. How do you get around that?
Well, I think actually I think people have jumped to the conclusion that they can't far too quickly. I don't know if you saw in the last month the Los Angeles Times website announcing that they could support their entire newspaper newsroom on their revenue. Now, I hadn't sort of studied the numbers, and I suspect it's a different market and so on, but I think people are jumping a little too quickly. The business models are still being worked out. You know, they're still 10 years young.
Is it tougher here? Because the proportion of the overall annual ad spend in New Zealand that goes online is much lower than, say, in Britain.
It is, but that means that there's room to grow. So no, it's going up, but we do also have the job of actually going out and selling ourselves to the ad agencies and telling them that that's a great way to actually advertise and to complement what's in the newspaper. It
seems odd that they need telling, though.
Possibly.
What's your take on that, Julie? Because Britain is, I think, just about leads the world in percentage of online ad spend. Why has it worked there?
Population. That's a huge help. Although that said, something like 50% of viewers or readers are actually overseas. I don't know the answer. I don't know that much about the New Zealand market or the numbers. I haven't seen the numbers.
Actually, this is one of the interesting things about online newspapers. It's the same balance for you, isn't it? 50% of your readers are overseas. Is that still the case?
It's about 40%. And at the moment they are harder to, as you say, monetise. But we're seeing more and more of that growth of New Zealanders overseas, expats wanting to come and read the Herald. Again, when there was snow in London, I think it was and the whole of the city came to a grinding halt. I think that was the first time we'd seen citizen journalism from another country back to here. We had dozens, hundreds of photos and videos pouring in from New Zealanders wanting to.
Well, I can actually remember the London tube bombings. You did the same thing, and it was interesting that New Zealanders, although they had newspapers to choose from in Britain, chose to communicate with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many blogs have you got on the site now?
About 12.
Are you planning to add any more?
I'm planning to re-look at all the ones we've got and keep adding them, but I do think actually that sometimes news websites get far too many. You know, there does come a point at which you've rewarded yourself in the office enough and you have to stop and go back to work and sort of turn the Herald off, I think. So,
well, you went one step further at the Telegraph, didn't you? You actually allowed readers to set up their own blogs on the Telegraph system. How did that work out?
Very well in terms of attracting a lot of people and really increasing user engagement, I suppose is the term. We kind of walled off an area of the site and called it My Telegraph and made it possible for readers to set up their own blogs, and it proved very, very attractive to people who'd never blogged before, didn't even know what blogs were, people of all age groups. Even some of our first bloggers were in their 70s and 80s. They were committed Telegraph readers, and it gave them a probably a comfortable space online to experiment with that kind of thing. And from our point of view, I'm not sure about this number, but my feeling is within a few weeks we had something like 2,000 people signed up. So there was a real attraction there, and it just brings people to the site and they spend more time on there, and again that's good for selling.
Whereas you've been quite a bit more cautious with user-generated content.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got your views, but that's moderated in advance.
Yeah.
You're not just letting people post willy-nilly, are you?
No, I mean, we watched that example of the Washington Post where, someone flamed one of their sort of forums, and it went on for 2 days unmoderated with something like 10,000 comments. So no, we have very strongly said, no, it has to be moderated so that we're actually getting debate on there rather than, just flaming comments and people abusing each other.
No, your views is it froths, doesn't it? It gets medieval.
It can
at times,
froth,
Jeremy.
and I've noticed that Public Address has also done a sort of a satire on it. So thank you very much.
Which our readers enjoyed greatly.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
It was very funny.
Yes.
I just want to put it that we've made a real distinction between viewers' comments on stories or on editorials and My Telegraph, which was a completely separate area. So it was very clear that this is a reader's area. And it is moderated, but not to the same extent. Obviously, you're going to put more moderation effort into, contentious topics on your news pages.
Now, it strikes me that a bigger change, even than having blogs and that sort of thing, is the simple element of newspapers suddenly doing breaking news, and arguably doing it to an even greater extent than radio, which used to own breaking news. How big a change has that been? Has that been difficult to get going? Because I presume you've got journalists who think they're writing for the daily paper.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's difficult at all, but if you go back to those people who set up the Herald 10 years ago, I was struck when I was talking to them, but they keep talking about the fact that we're going to be able to compete suddenly against radio and television, and there was that strong feeling 10 years ago that suddenly the newspaper was going to be able to move in and break news and really dominate the news agenda. And I think we've still got that. I think we still work hard at that. As to the journalists themselves, I mean, the Herald Online is actually separate from the Herald newspaper. It has its own staff. So we have our own reporters who work, and then they cooperate with the paper staff on breaking news. And at the same time, we also try and sort of orchestrate some of that citizen journalism when it starts coming in. For instance, when there was the shooting on the Northwestern Motorway, I think the most important...
And I have to say, it was you that I turned to first. I heard it on the radio, and then I turned to the Herald, which I think is how people are using the site now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, we were having our own staff out there on the ground, the Herald Online, the Herald newspaper people on the ground, as well as sort of news editors back at the office trying to work out what was going on from some of that citizen journalism that was pouring in.
Is there a right way of doing this, Julie? I mean, these are the same challenges faced by newspapers all over the world. Is there an exemplar? Is it the Guardian or the New York Times that gets this dual role for newspapers right?
Well, I think certainly the Guardian and the New York Times and the Telegraph and the Times, they're all doing a very good job. But no, I don't think there's one way of doing it. I think in different markets and different sized organisations have to find their own way. And in the last few years especially, and in the next few as well, it's an experimental time, I think. We're all new to this. We're all finding out how it works. And the internet, as you know, it's something, it changes every day. I actually get most of my first line news now comes from Twitter. That's where I get my news, and I go
because you're leading edge.
Go from there to the
so
news.
So where
website.
are we heading with this? Are we seeing the end of the printed paper newspaper anytime soon?
I don't expect to see it end, soon. I wouldn't be surprised. Sometimes I sort of like the idea of it evolving into a weekly magazine-style news paper, if you like, with the daily news and breaking news online. I don't know how long the economics are going to be right for printing a daily newspaper.
What do you make of that, Jeremy?
I think there'll always be a place for a daily newspaper of some description, especially if we sort of differentiate between the breaking news, as you say, the Twitter effect, and the thoughtful sort of putting it all together and what it means the next day. And so I think that's where they're differentiating. I mean, the Herald readership has gone up steadily and systematically over the last 10 years.
And I think you did some research and you found out that people who subscribe to the paper also read the website.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people do
they're coming
both,
to
don't they?
coming for totally different things. I mean, they're coming for breaking news, latest news, interactivity, discussion, I think, and reading opinion, and search so they can find articles they might have missed. But the newspaper still has portability on its side. It's got depth and breadth. I mean, it's got vivas and canvases and weekend reviews and so on that I think you can luxuriate in and take time and spend. So I actually think that the newspaper model is strong.
Just a quick question to the end. Is it all going to converge in a minority report kind of scenario where you've got a piece of electronic paper that populates with each day's news? Are we actually looking at that any time in the next 10 years, 20 years?
I don't know. How long's a piece of string? I mean, we'd be guessing, wouldn't we? I don't know. I mean, I agree with Jeremy. I like newspapers. I think they're fantastic, and I hope they last a very long time. I'm just not convinced that the economics are going to stack up in the longer term. Given that you're now spreading your resources across multiple outputs, you've got the web and you're putting out mobile and you've got your paper as well, or whatever else that you do.
Care to be more optimistic?
I thought I was being optimistic.
Yes.
I thought
well,
I was
more optimistic than Julie.
Yeah. Actually, again, going back to the 10th birthday, I was struck looking at what happened 10 years ago. It's still what people are trying to do now. People, you know, there was flying pig instead of ferret, and some of the other sort of sales things. So, I mean, things have actually, some of the things that people wanted to do 10 years ago are still there now, and I think that they remain the keys.
Well, we'll see how it goes in the next 10 years. I think it was a baby then, it's a toddler now. And that is our show for this week. Thank you to Jeremy Rees and Julie Starr, and to our crusading journalists, Pat Booth, Donna Chisholm and Keith Hunter. And thanks, of course, to you for joining us. We'll be back with Media 7 next week with the wisdom of the geeks. Until then, goodbye.